The Man with One Eye. In the small, misty town of Greyhaven, nestled at the edge of the hauntingly dense Blackwood Forest, there circulated a spine-chilling legend about a man with one eye, known to the locals as Cyclops Jack. His tale, woven into the fabric of Greyhaven's history, was a blend of sorrow, mystery, and unexplained occurrences. The story of Cyclops Jack dated back to the late 19th century. He was once known as Jack O'Malley, a reclusive but well-respected woodsman who lived at the forest's edge. Jack was a master craftsman, known for his exquisite woodwork which he sold at the local markets. He was recognizable by a distinctive feature. He had lost his left eye in a logging accident, leaving a hollow, shadowed socket that he never covered with a patch. One fateful night, a terrible fire engulfed Jack's cabin. The townspeople rushed to douse the flames, but it was too late. The cabin was reduced to ashes, and Jack was nowhere to be found. Some said he perished in the fire. Others speculated he had fled into the depths of Blackwood Forest, driven mad by grief and isolation. In the years that followed, eerie occurrences began to unfold in Greyhaven. Travellers and loggers venturing near the old cabin site reported seeing a one-eyed figure lurking amongst the trees, often accompanied by the distant sound of wood chopping. Items would go missing from campsites, only to be found intricately carved into woodland creatures and left at the forest's edge. The legend of Cyclops Jack grew with each telling. He was said to be a guardian of the forest, protecting it from harm. Some claimed he had been transformed by the forest spirits, given a second life to atone for his solitude in the human world. In 1923, a group of adventurous locals, led by a young, ambitious journalist named Clara Bennett, decided to uncover the truth. Along with her were two seasoned woodsmen, Thomas and Elijah, and a curious artist, Lydia, who wished to capture the essence of the legend in her paintings. The group ventured deep into Blackwood Forest, guided by the old tales and landmarks mentioned in the stories of Cyclops Jack. As they journeyed deeper, the forest seemed to close in around them, the light dimming and the air growing heavy with the scent of pine and earth. On the second night, they camped near the remnants of Jack's cabin. The atmosphere was tense, every sound amplified in the stillness of the forest. Clara, ever the skeptic, kept detailed notes, while Lydia sketched the haunting scenery. As dawn broke on the third day, they awoke to find a wooden figurine placed at the center of their camp, a one-eyed man, carved with extraordinary skill. This discovery sent a shiver down their spines. They were not alone in the forest. That evening, as the shadows grew longer, they finally encountered the man with one eye. He appeared suddenly, standing at the edge of their camp, his presence both menacing and sorrowful. His remaining eye held a depth of sadness that spoke of years of solitude. Clara, gathering her courage, approached him, asking if he was Jack O'Malley. The man nodded slowly, his voice a hoarse whisper. He spoke of his life, the fire, and his retreat into the forest, where he found peace in the solitude and a connection with the natural world. The group listened, captivated by his tale. Cyclops Jack was no longer a legend. He was a man with a story of loss and redemption. Lydia sketched his portrait, capturing the essence of his spirit, while Thomas and Elijah offered him supplies and food. Upon returning to Greyhaven, Clara published Jack's story, transforming the legend into a poignant tale of a man and his love for the forest. Lydia's sketches became famous, revered as a hauntingly beautiful representation of Cyclops Jack. To this day, the legend of the man with one eye continues to be told in Greyhaven. It's a tale that blurs the line between myth and reality, reminding the townsfolk of the mysteries that dwell in the heart of Blackwood Forest. The Civil War Soldier. In the quaint historic town of Eldridge Hollow, shrouded in the mists of the deep south, stood an ancient, sprawling cemetery known as Willow's End. It was here, amid the weathered tombstones and overgrown ivy, that the ghost of a Civil War soldier was said to roam, his story woven into the very fabric of the town. The soldier was known as Lieutenant James Hawthorne, a young man who had valiantly fought for the Confederacy. His tale began in the tumultuous days of the Civil War, when Eldridge Hollow was a bustling town caught in the crossfire of the nation's strife. James was the son of a prominent local family, known for his bravery and dedication to his cause. It was during the Battle of Eldridge Creek, a fierce and bloody conflict that swept through the town, that Lieutenant Hawthorne met his untimely end. He was leading a charge when a stray bullet struck him down. His men managed to retrieve his body and, in the dead of night, buried him in Willow's End Cemetery, marking his grave with a simple stone. Years passed, and the tale of Lieutenant Hawthorne faded into legend. However, strange occurrences began to manifest in the cemetery. Visitors reported seeing a spectral figure in a Confederate uniform wandering among the graves, often near Hawthorne's tombstone. Some claimed to hear the distant sound of marching feet or a soft, mournful whistling echoing through the trees. In 1954, a group of local historians, led by Eleanor Simmons, a professor of Southern history, decided to delve into the legend. Along with her were two amateur ghost hunters, Mark and Abigail, eager to capture evidence of the paranormal, and Joseph, a descendant of a Union soldier, curious about his family's history in the town. Their investigation began with extensive research into Lieutenant Hawthorne's life. They uncovered old letters, diaries, and military records that painted a vivid picture of a young man deeply committed to his cause, yet troubled by the horrors of war. Armed with this knowledge, the team ventured into Willow's End Cemetery one moonlit night. The atmosphere was heavy with the scent of old earth and moss-covered stones. As they set up their equipment, a sense of anticipation hung in the air. For hours, they wandered the cemetery, Eleanor narrating Hawthorne's history, while Mark and Abigail monitored their ghost-hunting gear. Joseph, meanwhile, wandered alone, reflecting on the intertwined histories of the Union and Confederate soldiers. It was close to midnight when they first saw him, the ghostly figure of Lieutenant Hawthorne, standing solemnly by his grave. The air around him seemed to shimmer, and for a brief moment they could see the pain and sorrow etched on his spectral face. Eleanor stepped forward, speaking gently to the apparition, acknowledging his sacrifice and the tragedy of the war. As she spoke, the ghost of Hawthorne seemed to listen, his expression softening. Mark and Abigail, their equipment buzzing and flashing, managed to capture faint images and sounds, a whisper, a fragment of a sad melody, the rustle of a uniform. Joseph, watching from a distance, felt a deep sense of closure, a bridging of the past and present. The ghost of Lieutenant Hawthorne gradually faded away, disappearing into the night air. The team left the cemetery in silence, each lost in thought. They had come seeking a legend, but found a poignant reminder of the past's lingering echoes. Their findings, later shared with the town, transformed the legend of the Civil War soldier into a story of remembrance and reconciliation. The ghost of Lieutenant Hawthorne continued to be seen in Willow's End, but now his presence was met with understanding and respect, a symbol of a nation's painful history and the hope for healing. To this day, the legend of the Civil War soldier of Eldridge Hollow remains a vital part of the town's lore, a spectral figure wandering in the shadows of history, forever etched into the memory of Willow's End. Unmarked Gravestone. In the forgotten corner of Rose Hill Cemetery, in the small, sleepy town of Marrowdale, there lay an unmarked gravestone, old and worn, with no name to tell who lay beneath. This gravestone, shrouded in mystery and overgrown with ivy, was the center of a chilling urban legend that had been whispered in Marrowdale for generations. The legend began in the late 1800s, when Marrowdale was a bustling town thriving on the gold rush. Among its residents was a reclusive old man named Elias Crane. Rumored to be a miner who struck it rich, Elias lived in a dilapidated mansion at the edge of town, avoiding contact with other townsfolk. Strange tales surrounded Elias. It was said that at night eerie lights glowed from his mansion, and haunting melodies could be heard drifting into the town. People spoke of his shadow looming in his window, watching the town with an inscrutable gaze. One stormy night, a terrible scream echoed through Marrowdale. The next morning, Elias Crane was found dead in his home, his body contorted in an expression of sheer terror. No cause of death was determined, and with no known relatives, Elias was buried in an unmarked grave in Rose Hill Cemetery. After his burial, peculiar incidents began occurring in Marrowdale. Townspeople reported seeing a shadowy figure near Elias's grave, especially on stormy nights. Objects in the cemetery would be found rearranged, and some claimed to hear whispered voices near the unmarked grave. In 2005, a group of local college students, led by an aspiring journalist named Sarah, decided to uncover the truth behind the legend. Along with her were Alex, a history major fascinated by local law, Jamie, a photography student, and Tyler, who claimed to have a sixth sense for the supernatural. Their investigation started at the town archives, where they unearthed old records about Elias Crane. They discovered that Elias was indeed a successful miner, but had become increasingly paranoid about his wealth, isolating himself from society. Equipped with this knowledge and their curiosity piqued, the group ventured into Rose Hill Cemetery one foggy evening. The unmarked grave was not hard to find, hidden beneath the twisted branches of an ancient oak tree. As they approached, Tyler suddenly stopped, claiming to feel a powerful, unsettling energy emanating from the grave. Jamie, camera in hand, began taking photos of the surroundings, hoping to capture something unusual. Sarah, ever the skeptic, started recording their observations, narrating the history of Elias Crane. Alex, meanwhile, inspected the gravestone, trying to decipher any hidden markings that time had eroded. As the night deepened, a sudden chill enveloped the cemetery. The wind howled, and for a moment it seemed as if a whisper swept through the trees, murmuring secrets long forgotten. It was then that Jamie's camera captured something extraordinary, a faint apparition hovering near the unmarked grave. It appeared to be a figure cloaked in shadows, its features obscured. The group stood in stunned silence, their skepticism waning. Tyler, sensing a presence, reached out, asking if the spirit had a message. The air grew colder, and a soft, almost inaudible voice seemed to reply, speaking of hidden treasures and unfulfilled desires. Overwhelmed by the encounter, the group quickly left the cemetery. Over the following days, they analyzed the evidence they had gathered. Jamie's photos showed the ghostly figure more clearly, while Sarah's recordings had faint traces of the whispered voice. Their findings were published in the local newspaper, reigniting interest in the legend of the unmarked gravestone. The story of Elias Crane, once a mere footnote in Marrowdale's history, became a topic of intrigue and speculation. To this day, the unmarked gravestone in Rose Hill Cemetery remains an enigma. The ghostly figure, believed to be the restless spirit of Elias Crane, continues to be sighted, a silent sentinel guarding secrets buried in the shadows of time. The legend of the unmarked gravestone of Marrowdale endures, a chilling reminder of the past's mysteries, forever etched in the town's collective memory. The Man in the Back Alley. In the bustling city of Greyhaven, amidst the labyrinth of streets and towering buildings, there existed an alley known to the locals as Shadwell Lane. It was a narrow, cobblestoned passage flanked by the backs of old brick buildings, fire escapes clinging to their sides like metal ivy. This alley, often shrouded in shadows even during the day, was the setting for one of the city's most enduring urban legends, the man in the back alley. The story began in the late 1970s when reports started surfacing about a mysterious figure seen in Shadwell Lane. Described as an elderly man dressed in a tattered black coat and wide-brimmed hat, he was said to appear and disappear without a trace, always in the dead of night. Those who claimed to have seen him spoke of a chilling presence, a feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. As the legend grew, so did the tales about the man's origins. Some said he was the ghost of a homeless man who had died in the alley, forgotten and alone. Others whispered that he was a former resident of Greyhaven, a reclusive figure who had vanished under mysterious circumstances, his spirit now haunting the place he once called home. In 1984, a young photographer named Michael Trent decided to investigate the legend. Armed with his camera, Michael spent several nights in Shadwell Lane, hoping to capture evidence of the elusive figure. On the third night, as a fog rolled in, blanketing the alley in a ghostly mist, Michael's patience paid off. He saw the man, standing at the far end of the alley, his face obscured by the brim of his hat. As Michael raised his camera, the figure slowly raised his head, revealing eyes that shone with an unnatural light. The moment was fleeting. The man vanished as suddenly as he had appeared, leaving Michael with a single, blurred photograph. This photograph, published in the local newspaper, reignited interest in the legend. People began flocking to Shadwell Lane, some out of curiosity, others hoping to confront their fears. The alley became a site of fascination and fear, a place where the boundary between reality and myth seemed to blur. Years passed and the sightings continued, each account adding to the enigma of the man in the back alley. Some residents of Greyhaven claimed that he was a guardian of the alley, a spectral figure who protected the area from harm. Others believed he was a malevolent spirit, a harbinger of misfortune to those who dared to invade his territory. In the late 1990s, a group of paranormal investigators took an interest in Shadwell Lane. Led by a renowned medium named Clara Redwood, the team conducted a series of overnight vigils, hoping to communicate with the spirit. During one such vigil, Clara claimed to have made contact with the man. According to her, he was indeed a former resident of Greyhaven, a man named Edward Malley, who had lived a life marked by tragedy and solitude. In death, he remained in the alley, bound to the place of his deepest sorrow. Clara's account, though met with skepticism by some, added a poignant layer to the legend, transforming the man from a figure of fear to one of sympathy. The legend of the man in the back alley became a part of Greyhaven's cultural fabric, a story passed down through generations. While some continued to report sightings, others visited the alley to pay respects to the spirit of Edward Malley, leaving flowers and notes in his memory. To this day, Shadwell Lane remains a place of mystery, a reminder of the city's hidden stories and forgotten souls. The man in the back alley, whether real or imagined, stands as a testament to the enduring power of legend, a shadowy figure forever wandering the narrow passage of Shadwell Lane, caught between the world of the living and the realm of ghosts. The Black Mirror of Winchester Manor. In the heart of the English countryside, nestled among rolling hills and ancient woods, lies the imposing structure of Winchester Manor. An architectural marvel of the Victorian era, the manor has long been the subject of whispered tales and local folklore. The most intriguing of these is the legend of the Black Mirror of Winchester Manor. The story dates back to the late 19th century, when the manor was home to the Winchester family, Known for their wealth, eccentricity, and tragic history, the central figure of this tale is Lady Elizabeth Winchester, the last surviving member of the family line. Lady Elizabeth, a woman of great beauty and intelligence, was rumoured to possess a curious object, a large, ornate mirror with a frame of blackened oak and intricate carvings that depicted scenes from mythology. This mirror, unlike any other, was said to have mysterious powers, a portal to another realm or a conduit for communicating with the dead. According to legend, Lady Elizabeth became obsessed with the mirror after the untimely deaths of her family. It was said that she would spend hours gazing into its reflective surface, speaking to unseen spirits and slowly descending into madness. Servants spoke of strange noises emanating from her chamber and of glimpses of shadowy figures reflected in the mirror. The mystery deepened with the sudden and unexplained death of Lady Elizabeth. She was found in her chamber, seated before the mirror, a look of horror frozen on her face. No cause of death could be determined, and the mirror, thereafter, was dubbed the Black Mirror of Winchester Manor. After Lady Elizabeth's death, the manor changed hands several times, but none of its occupants stayed long, each driven away by an uneasy presence they felt emanating from the mirror. Stories spread of the mirror's curse and of the spirits trapped within its glass. In the 1920s, a group of paranormal researchers, intrigued by the legend, visited Winchester Manor. They conducted a series of experiments attempting to uncover the truth behind the Black Mirror. Their findings were inconclusive, but they reported experiencing a profound sense of dread and despair near the mirror, and some claimed to see fleeting images of people and places not of their time. The manor eventually fell into disrepair, abandoned and avoided by locals who feared the curse of the Black Mirror. It wasn't until the late 20th century that interest in the manor was rekindled, thanks to the efforts of a historian named Arthur Holloway. Holloway, fascinated by the legend, embarked on a quest to uncover the truth about Lady Elizabeth and her mysterious mirror. His research led him to discover hidden letters and diaries belonging to Lady Elizabeth, which revealed a tragic story of love, loss, and a desperate quest for reunion with her deceased loved ones. According to her writings, Lady Elizabeth believed the mirror could bridge the gap between the living and the dead. She spoke of a thin veil that the mirror could pierce, allowing her to communicate with her lost family. However, her experiments with the mirror came at a great cost, as she described an increasing sense of being watched and a growing despair that consumed her. Holloway's findings painted a picture of a woman tormented by grief, seeking solace in the supernatural. The Black Mirror, he proposed, was not a cursed object, but a focal point for Lady Elizabeth's psychic energies and her intense emotional turmoil. Today, Winchester Manor is a site of historical interest, its eerie past drawing visitors from around the world. The Black Mirror, still hanging in Lady Elizabeth's chamber, continues to fascinate and frighten, while some visitors report feeling a strange sadness or seeing fleeting shadows in the glass. Others feel nothing but the weight of history and a story of human suffering. The legend of the Black Mirror of Winchester Manor endures, a poignant reminder of the fine line between grief and madness and of the human desire to reach beyond the veil of death. Whether a portal to another world or simply a mirror reflecting our own fears and desires, the Black Mirror remains an enigmatic symbol of the mysteries that lie at the heart of Winchester Manor. The dead water of Parker Pond. In a remote corner of New England, shrouded in the mists of dense woodlands and forgotten lore, lies Parker Pond. A serene yet unnerving body of water, it is the source of whispered tales that have permeated the local consciousness for generations. Known as the dead water of Parker Pond, its legend is as chilling as the cold, dark depths of the pond itself. The story begins over a century ago when Parker Pond was just a tranquil spot visited by the townsfolk of nearby Parker Village for fishing and summer picnics. The pond's dark transformation is traced back to a tragic event that occurred in the late 1800s. A young couple, Sarah and Thomas Whitaker, who were madly in love, decided to take a moonlit row on the pond. As the story goes, under a sky filled with stars, their boat mysteriously capsized in calm waters, and both drowned, their bodies never recovered. Following this tragedy, the pond gained a reputation for being cursed. Locals reported strange occurrences such as unexplained ripples and fog that seemed to appear out of nowhere, engulfing the entire pond within seconds. But the most disturbing aspect was the water itself. Once clear and teeming with fish, it turned dark and murky, as if refusing to reflect the sky above. No life was seen in its waters again, thus earning the name Deadwater. Over the years, many theories surfaced, trying to explain the strange phenomena. Some believed the pond was a gateway to another realm, while others thought it was haunted by the spirits of Sarah and Thomas, forever reliving their final moments. In the 1920s, a group of daring local youths decided to debunk the superstitions by camping near the pond. Their overnight venture turned into a nightmare when they reported hearing heart-wrenching sobs and desperate cries for help emanating from the pond, with no apparent source. One of the youths claimed to have seen a ghostly figure of a woman, her face distorted with sorrow, hovering over the waiter. The experience was so traumatic that the pond was thereafter avoided by most. Decades later, in the 1970s, a renowned paranormal investigator, Dr. Helen Magnus, took an interest in Parker Pond. Her extensive research and overnight vigils led to some startling discoveries. Using sensitive equipment, she recorded unexplained temperature drops and electromagnetic disturbances around the pond. Dr. Magnus also documented a series of EVP, electronic voice phenomena, recordings, which included what sounded like faint whispers and a woman's voice calling out the name Thomas. In recent years, Parker Pond has become a subject of interest for both paranormal enthusiasts and skeptics. Environmental scientists have analyzed the water, finding it to be unusually devoid of life, but could not provide a satisfactory explanation for its condition. Photographs taken by visitors often show unexplained mists and orbs, particularly around the area where the Whitakers supposedly drowned. The local folklore has evolved with each passing year. Some say that on the anniversary of the Whitakers' deaths, if one listens carefully, the sounds of a distant rowboat can be heard, along with faint laughter, abruptly cut off by a splash and then silence. Others claim to have seen faces in the water, staring up from the depths with sorrowful eyes. Despite numerous investigations and studies, the mystery of Parker Pond remains unsolved. The dead water, with its dark, still surface, continues to captivate and terrify. Whether a hub of paranormal activity or merely a canvas for the human imagination to paint its fears, Parker Pond stands as a somber reminder of the tragic love story of Sarah and Thomas Whitaker, and of the eerie mysteries that nature can harbor in its most serene settings. Sisters in the Attic. In the quaint historic town of Thornfield, nestled among rolling hills and ancient woodlands, there stood an imposing Victorian mansion known as Waverley House. Its towering spires and ornate Gothic architecture had long been the subject of local legend, but none were as chilling or enduring as the tale of the Sisters in the Attic. The story began in the late 19th century with the Waverley family, who were among Thornfield's most prominent and affluent residents. The family consisted of Gerald and Eleanor Waverley and their two daughters, Charlotte and Emily. The girls were known for their striking beauty, keen intelligence, and deep bond with each other. As they grew older, The sisters became reclusive, rarely seen outside the confines of their grand home. Whispers circulated among the townsfolk about the sisters' odd behavior and their parents' strict rules. It was said that Gerald and Eleanor, fearing the outside world would corrupt their daughters, confined them to the attic of Waverley House. The years passed, and the sisters' presence faded into obscurity, becoming nothing more than a ghostly rumour. Then, one fateful night in 1894, a terrible fire engulfed Waverley House. Gerald, Eleanor, and several servants perished, but there was no sign of Charlotte and Emily. Some claimed they had been trapped in the attic, while others speculated they had escaped and vanished into the night. In the years that followed, Waverley House was rebuilt and changed hands multiple times, but no occupants stayed long, driven away by strange occurrences. It was said that at night one could hear soft footsteps and hushed whispers emanating from the attic, as if the sisters still roamed its dusty, forgotten halls. In 2004, a young couple, David and Lily Anderson, purchased Waverley House, drawn to its historic charm and oblivious to its macabre past. Shortly after moving in, Lily, a freelance writer, became fascinated with the house's history and began researching the Waverley family. Her research led her to an old diary, hidden within a secret compartment in the attic. It belonged to Emily Waverley and detailed the sisters' life of isolation, their longing for freedom, and their growing despair. Emily wrote of secret plans to flee, to start anew far from Thornfield's judgmental eyes. As Lily delved deeper into the diary, strange things started happening in the house. Objects moved on their own, cold draughts swept through rooms, and the sounds of quiet sobbing echoed in the night. Most unsettling were the sightings of two spectral figures, resembling young women, wandering the corridors and gazing longingly out of the attic window. David, initially a skeptic, soon experienced these phenomena firsthand. One evening, while investigating a noise in the attic, he saw the ghostly apparitions of the sisters. They appeared as they were described in old town records, ethereal, with sad, knowing eyes, dressed in faded gowns of a bygone era. Determined to uncover the truth, Lily reached out to a local historian, Mrs. Abigail Hawthorne. Together, they pieced together the tragic tale of Charlotte and Emily. They learned that on the night of the fire, the sisters had indeed planned to escape. However, a fallen candle had ignited a blaze, trapping them in their attic sanctuary. The discovery brought a new understanding of the sisters' plight and a desire to help them find peace. In a solemn ceremony, Lily and David, along with Mrs. Hawthorne, conducted a ritual to release the sisters' spirits. They read passages from Emily's diary, acknowledging the sisters' dreams and sorrows, and offered words of forgiveness and farewell. As the ceremony concluded, a feeling of tranquility settled over Waverley House. The ghostly sightings ceased, and the eerie whispers were silenced. The house, once a place of sorrow and secrets, gradually transformed into a warm and welcoming home for the Andersons. The legend of the sisters in the attic lived on in Thornfield, not as a tale of terror, but as a poignant reminder of the past's hidden stories, waiting to be uncovered and understood. Waverley House, once a symbol of mystery and fear, became a testament to the enduring power of compassion and closure. The Beast of Bentley Road. In the small, secluded town of Hollow Creek, nestled amidst dense forests and rolling hills, there existed a legend that had been passed down through generations. It was the legend of the Beast of Bentley Road, a mysterious creature said to roam the thick woods surrounding the town, particularly the stretch of road that wound through the densest part of the forest, Bentley Road. The legend began in the early 1900s when travelers and locals started reporting sightings of a strange creature along Bentley Road, described as a massive, shadowy figure with glowing red eyes and an unnerving howl. The beast struck fear in the hearts of those who heard the tales. Some claimed it was a bear, others a wolf, but a few old-timers insisted it was something far more sinister, a creature from the netherworld, a remnant of a time long forgotten. As the years went by, the sightings grew more frequent. Farmers complained of livestock going missing, and hunters spoke of an unnerving presence watching them from the shadows. The local newspaper, the Hollow Creek Gazette, often featured stories about the beast, each account more sensational than the last. In the autumn of 1985, the legend took a darker turn when a group of teenagers camping near Bentley Road encountered the beast. Their harrowing experience, recounted by the sole survivor, a young girl named Sarah Jennings, added a chilling chapter to the tale. According to Sarah, the beast had attacked their camp in the dead of night, its howls paralyzing them with fear. In the chaos, she had fled, hearing the screams of her friends behind her. By morning, when the authorities arrived, the campsite was in disarray with no sign of the beast or Sarah's friends. The incident sparked a frenzy in Hollow Creek. Fearful residents demanded action, leading to several organized hunts to track down and eliminate the beast. However, each expedition into the dense woods came up empty, with no trace of the creature to be found. Years passed, and the legend of the beast of Bentley Road became a staple of local lore, a story told around campfires and during Halloween gatherings. However, for Sarah Jennings, now a grown woman, the memories were all too real. Haunted by that fateful night and the loss of her friends, Sarah became obsessed with uncovering the truth behind the legend. Her quest for answers led her to delve into the town's history, where she discovered old records of a similar creature sighted in the late 1800s. This creature, referred to as the Guardian of the Woods in ancient folklore, was said to protect the forest and its creatures from harm. It was revered by the indigenous people who once lived in the area, considered a spiritual entity rather than a physical being. Armed with this new information, Sarah began to see the beast in a different light. Perhaps it was not a malevolent force, but a misunderstood protector of the natural world. She theorized that the increasing human encroachment into the forest might have provoked the creature, leading to the aggressive behavior witnessed in recent decades. Determined to prove her theory, Sarah embarked on a daring mission. She ventured alone into the woods, camping near the same spot where the tragedy had occurred years ago. Night after night she waited, hoping for a sign. Finally, on a moonlit night, her patience was rewarded. The beast appeared, emerging from the shadows at the edge of her camp. Sarah, though terrified, stood her ground, looking directly into its glowing red eyes. In that moment, she felt a connection, an understanding passing between them. The beast, sensing no threat, merely watched her for a long while before disappearing back into the darkness. Sarah's encounter marked a turning point in the legend of the Beast of Bentley Road. She shared her experience, advocating for the protection of the creature and the forest. Gradually, the town's perception of the beast shifted from fear to a respectful acknowledgement of its role as a guardian of the natural world. The sightings continued, but they were no longer met with panic or hostility. Instead, they were seen as a reminder of the delicate balance between humans and nature, and of the mysteries that still lurked in the unexplored corners of the world. The Beast of Bentley Road became more than just a legend. It became a symbol of the wild, untamed spirit of the forest, a reminder that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved, existing in the space between reality and myth, forever wandering the shadowy paths of Hollow Creek. Ghost Horse on Shady Ridge Lane. In the quaint rural town of Maple Hollow, nestled among rolling hills and dense forests, there lies a narrow, winding road known as Shady Ridge Lane. This seemingly ordinary lane, bordered by ancient oaks and overgrown brambles, harbours a legend that has captivated the town's imagination for over a century. The legend of the ghost horse. The tale dates back to the late 1800s, when Shady Ridge Lane was nothing more than a dirt path used by local farmers. It was then that a wealthy landowner, Edward Harrington, known for his love of horses, purchased a magnificent black stallion. Named Midnight, the horse was said to be as swift as the wind and as loyal as a dog to its master. Harrington and Midnight became a common sight, galloping along the lane at all hours of the day. However, tragedy struck one stormy night when Harrington, riding Midnight, failed to return home. The following morning, townspeople found Harrington's body at the base of a steep cliff along Shady Ridge Lane. Midnight was nowhere to be found, and despite extensive searches, the horse was never seen again. It was not long after the accident that locals began to report sightings of a spectral horse along the lane. Witnesses described seeing a black stallion, its coat shimmering under the moonlight, galloping at a breakneck pace, only to vanish into thin air. Some claimed to hear the sound of hooves pounding on the dirt road, accompanied by a chilling whinny that echoed through the night. As the years passed, the sightings of the ghost horse became a regular occurrence, especially on stormy nights, much like the one on which Harrington met his untimely end. The legend grew, and with it, the lore surrounding the horse. Some believed that Midnight was searching for his master, unable to rest until he found Harrington. Others thought the horse was a harbinger of doom, appearing before impending tragedies in the town. In the 1950s, a group of local historians and equine enthusiasts, intrigued by the legend, embarked on a project to uncover the truth behind the ghost horse. Their research led them to Old Town records and Harrington's remaining family members. They discovered that Harrington had been a kind and beloved figure in Maple Hollow, and his bond with Midnight was well known and admired. Their investigation, however, could not explain the supernatural sightings. No records of Midnight's fate existed, and the horse's disappearance remained a mystery. Over the years, the legend of the ghost horse on Shady Ridge Lane has become a staple of local folklore. The lane itself has changed little, maintaining its eerie, secluded atmosphere. Residents and visitors often take walks along the road, hoping for a glimpse of the legendary stallion. Many leave with stories of unexplained sounds and fleeting shadows that dance just out of sight. Photographs claimed to capture the ghostly figure of Midnight have circulated, but none have provided definitive proof. These images typically show a blurry, black figure in the distance, its form blending into the night. Today, the ghost horse is celebrated in Maple Hollow's culture. The town hosts an annual Midnight Ride Festival, featuring horseback rides along Shady Ridge Lane, storytelling events, and even a midnight look-alike contest for local horses. Whether a product of collective imagination or a genuine supernatural phenomenon, the ghost horse of Shady Ridge Lane continues to captivate and mystify. It stands as a timeless reminder of the bond between man and horse and the enduring power of legend in the hearts of those who believe. The shadows on the wall of Fulton House. The Fulton House, standing in the outskirts of a quiet town, holds a mystery that has puzzled locals and paranormal enthusiasts alike for decades. This grand Victorian-era mansion, with its towering gables and dark, brooding appearance, has long been the subject of whispered rumors and chilling tales, particularly concerning the strange, shadowy figures that are said to dance upon its walls. Built in the late 1800s by the wealthy and reclusive Fulton family, the house was a marvel of its time, featuring intricate woodwork, stained glass windows, and an imposing facade. However, it wasn't long before tragedy struck. The youngest Fulton daughter, Amelia, met a mysterious and untimely death in the house. Her body was found in her room, with no apparent cause of death. Following this tragedy, the Fulton family became even more secluded, and the house took on a somber, neglected air. It was after the death of the last Fulton heir in the 1940s that the house became the focus of eerie occurrences. Passers-by began to report seeing shadowy figures moving across the closed curtains of the upper-floor windows. These sightings were often accompanied by a feeling of intense cold and an unshakable sense of dread. Over the years, the stories grew more elaborate and terrifying. Some claimed that the shadows were the restless spirits of the Fulton family, eternally reliving their tragic past. Others whispered that Amelia's spirit was trapped in the house, her untimely death leaving her tethered to the mortal world. In the 1970s, a group of paranormal researchers, led by Dr. Laura Henderson, decided to investigate the Fulton house. Their overnight stay in the mansion was marked by a series of unexplained phenomena. The team reported drastic temperature drops, malfunctioning equipment, and eerie sounds echoing through the empty halls. Most startling of all were the shadows they witnessed on the walls of Amelia's old bedroom. These shadows seemed to move with purpose, almost as if reenacting a scene from the past. Despite the team's extensive research, they could not provide a scientific explanation for these occurrences. Dr. Henderson's report concluded that the phenomena might be a manifestation of residual energy, possibly tied to the tragic history of the house. Since then, the Fulton house has become a site of fascination for those interested in the paranormal. Amateur ghost hunters and curious tourists have attempted their own investigations with varying degrees of success. Some emerge with tales of ghostly encounters and unexplainable experiences, while others find nothing but the empty echoes of a long-forgotten past. Local folklore suggests that on the anniversary of Amelia's death, the activity within the house reaches its peak. People have reported seeing lights flickering in the abandoned house, and the shadows on the walls become more pronounced and animated. Some locals even claim to hear the faint sound of a woman weeping echoing through the empty rooms. Despite numerous attempts to explain the shadows on the wall of Fulton House, the mystery remains unsolved. Is it merely a trick of light and shadow, a figment of overactive imaginations fueled by tragic history? Or is there something truly supernatural at work, a glimpse into a realm beyond our understanding? The Fulton house, with its darkened windows and silent walls, keeps its secrets, a lasting symbol of the enigmatic and the unexplained.